Throughout history, countless kings, emperors, and conquerors have ruled the world and then passed away. But only a few of them have managed to find a place in people's hearts even thousands of years after their death. And today, the story we are going to tell you is that of a legendary leader who embodied power and justice, conquest and compassion, grandeur and humility all at once. This is the story of Dhul-Qarnayn, whose tale is told in the Surah Al-Kahf of the Qur'an, who left a profound mark on the stage of history and whose name has been spoken for centuries. Today, we will follow in his footsteps. We will see not only the life of a king, but also how a person tamed his own power, turned knowledge into a shield, and while ruling the world, actually conquered his own ego. If you're ready, we are heading to the place where the story began, to the first star shining in the mountains of Media. As the last rays of the sun painted the palace walls crimson, there was an anxious anticipation in the corridors. In the heart of the most powerful kingdom of the era, an heir to the throne was being born. Palace soothsayers, astrologers, physicians, they were all gazing at the sky, because that night the stars heralded not the arrival of an ordinary child, but the coming of a soul destined to change the world. And the child was born. When his father looked at him, he saw more than just a baby in those tiny eyes. It was as if the soul of an ancient sage who had lived for centuries had found life in that fresh body. They called him Dhul-Qarnayn, but being a prince was not just about sleeping on silk pillows, as you might think. When he was only 7 years old, his father would take him on horseback and show him the endless plains. Little Dhul-Qarnayn did not look at his people from behind the high palace walls. He mingled among them himself. One day, his father took him to the top of a hill. He pointed out the people below, who looked like ants, the fields, and the houses, and gave him a lesson he would never forget. "My son, look at those people down there. A king's duty is not to rule over them. A king's true duty is to ensure that a farmer can plow his field in peace and that a mother can put her child to sleep in safety. If even a single tear falls from an innocent person's eye because of your decision, that crown will become a ring of fire on your head." These words were engraved in young Dhul-Qarnayn's heart. He learned to heal a wound just as well as he learned to wield a sword. He studied the movements of the sky and the language of the earth as much as he studied war strategies. A relative of his palace tutor, wise Khidr, asked him, "Do you wish to be strong or to be right?" Without hesitation, Dhul-Qarnayn replied, "I want to be strong enough to protect what is right." Years passed. When his father passed away, the heavy cloak of the empire was placed upon his shoulders. The vizier said, "Stay in the palace, enjoy the treasures." But he looked at the map. He saw the west groaning under oppression, the unprotected east, and the north under threat. "No," he said, "the power given to me is not for my own pleasure, but for the peace of humanity." And so the great journey began. When the army set out, the earth and sky trembled. But this army was not a barbaric horde out to plunder. Among them were engineers, architects, doctors, and scholars. At the very front marched Dhul-Qarnayn and his spiritual companion, the keeper of secrets, Hazrat Khidr. After months of arduous travel, they reached the western edge of the world, the place where the known lands ended at that time. This was the shore where the ocean appeared like a muddy, hot, and murky spring. At sunset, it seemed as if the sun was sinking into boiling mud within the sea. Of course, this was merely an optical illusion, but the atmosphere was so enchanting that one would feel as if they had reached the end of the world here. However, in this land, even though the scenery was beautiful, humanity was ugly. Dhul-Qarnayn encountered a tribe living here. These people had established a system where the strong oppressed the weak, justice was sold for money, and compassion was forgotten. Let us pause here and reflect. What does a ruler do when he holds absolute power in his hands? Usually they either massacre everyone or enslave them, right? But Dhul-Qarnayn taught us the true meaning of justice. He gathered the people and addressed them saying, "We have not come here to take your lands. We have come to set the scales right. Whoever commits oppression, acts unjustly, and usurps the rights of others will find us standing against them, and ultimately, divine justice. But whoever believes is honest and does good, we will reward them in the best way and make things easy for them." This was a revolutionary approach for that era. He offered people not fear, but a choice. A system that punishes evil but rewards goodness. Dhul-Qarnayn conquered not only cities in the west, but also consciences. He restored ruined temples. He toppled idols and established the belief in Tawheed, that is, faith in a single creator, in their place. After establishing order in the west, he turned his compass in the exact opposite direction toward the place where the sun rises, the east. This was a completely different world. The lush green valleys were left behind. Now, before them stretched endless deserts and rocky lands ruled by scorching heat. They encountered a community described in the text as the people upon whom the sun rises. These people were so helpless that they had no buildings to shield them from the sun, no clothes to wear, and not even the shade of a tree to take refuge under. When the sun rose, they would hide in caves or underground holes, and when night fell, they would go out to search for sustenance. Geography had trapped them on the thin line between life and death. Dhul-Qarnayn dismounted from his army and went to these people. Even though he did not know their language, he could read the helplessness in their eyes. The viziers beside him might have thought, "Master, what benefit can come from these savages?" They could have thought, "Let's just pass by." But Dhul-Qarnayn's philosophy was based on building and creating. He did not abandon those people to their fate. He summoned his engineers. He taught them to build shelters to protect themselves from the sun, and even if simple, he taught them architectural techniques. He relocated some of them to more habitable regions. The lesson here was profound. The strong exist not to oppress the weak, but to lift them up and support them. Dhul-Qarnayn brought compassion to this place untouched by civilization. And now, we come to the most striking, the most scientific, and the most mysterious part of our story: the northern journey. When Dhul-Qarnayn reached the area between two great mountains, he found a people living there, trembling in fear. These people could hardly understand any language and lived withdrawn into themselves. They were terrified. Why, you ask? Because behind the mountains, there was an unstoppable force, a calamity known as Gog and Magog. These groups would raid at certain times, ravage the crops, kill people, and leave nothing but destruction behind. When the local people saw Dhul-Qarnayn's power, they pleaded with him. "O great ruler, help us, we will pay you tribute, we will pour out treasures for you. Just build a barrier, a wall between us and those corruptors." Dhul-Qarnayn smiled. He had no need for treasures. His response was one that could serve as a lesson even for today's modern world. "The power and means my lord has given me are better than the tribute you offer. Give me not your money but your strength. Help me so that I may build with you an unbreachable barrier, a redem between you and them." Notice, he doesn't say wall, he says barrier. And here begins a lesson in technology that even a 7-year-old child could understand, but which would amaze engineers. Dhul-Qarnayn did not build an ordinary stone wall. Stone walls could eventually collapse or be breached. He used chemistry and metallurgy. He commanded the people, "Bring me blocks of iron." They filled the two slopes of the mountains with blocks of iron. A massive heap was formed. Then he said, "Fan the flames." Fires were lit. The iron was heated until it became red hot, until it was glowing. The space between the mountains had turned into a giant furnace. And here comes that ingenious touch. "Now bring me molten copper." Dhul-Qarnayn had molten copper poured over that massive red-hot block of iron. But why? Let's look at it scientifically. Iron is very strong, but it rusts and is brittle. Copper, on the other hand, is soft. However, when these two are combined, when molten copper seeps into the pores of the iron, the result is a composite alloy, a barrier that is resistant to rust, flexible against impacts, and impossible to penetrate. The resulting structure was so smooth and slippery that Gog and Magog could neither climb over it nor break through it. This was one of the greatest engineering marvels humanity had ever seen up to that day. Knowledge, effort, and faith had come together and stopped the oppression. The barrier was complete. The massive wall was shining under the sun. The people were shouting with joy, showering praise on Dhul-Qarnayn. What does a king usually do? He says, "I did this, it's my power, my achievement," right? He inscribes his name on monuments. But Dhul-Qarnayn stood before that magnificent work, raised his hands, and said these words that would go down in history. "This is not my power, it is a mercy from my Lord." He continued, "When the promise of my Lord comes, he will level this barrier to the ground, because the promise of my Lord is true." This is what true greatness is, to know that even the strongest wall in the world will one day fall, not to worship one's own creation, and never to forget that the true owner of power is the Creator. Dhul-Qarnayn had separated not only iron and copper, but also arrogance and humility. The expeditions had ended, but the spiritual journey was not over. This time, Dhul-Qarnayn turned his direction toward the Kaaba to Mecca. There, he would meet the father of faith, Prophet Abraham. Imagine this scene. One is Dhul-Qarnayn, the material ruler of the world, commander of armies. The other is Prophet Abraham, the Sultan of Hearts. As Dhul-Qarnayn approached Mecca, he dismounted from his horse, he took off his crown. He dressed in simple clothing. He walked to the Kaaba not as a king, but as a servant. When he met Prophet Abraham, they embraced like two friends. Prophet Abraham prayed for him. Perhaps this prayer was Dhul-Qarnayn's greatest treasure. There they once again affirmed the transience of worldly possessions and power, and that what truly matters is friendship and service done for the sake of God's pleasure. They circumambulated the Kaaba together. It was a moment when swords fell silent and prayers spoke. Years flowed by like rivers. Gray hairs appeared on the head of that young, vigorous king who had traveled the world. His body grew weary. When he felt the angel of death approaching, he made his final preparations in his palace. He gathered his viziers, commanders, and children. Everyone thought he would leave behind a great inheritance, that he would reveal the location of his treasures. But he made a very strange will, one that sent shivers down their spines. Wash me, shroud me, and place me in my coffin. But let my arms hang out from both sides of the coffin. Let my hands be empty, my palms open, swinging freely. Everyone was astonished. "Sir, what does this mean?" "This goes against tradition," they said. At his last breath, Dhul-Qarnayn gave this answer in a whisper, yet as powerful as a thunderclap. "I want the whole world to see as you carry me to my grave. Look, I am Dhul-Qarnayn, ruler of the East and the West. My treasures were beyond counting. My armies covered the horizons. But now I am leaving, and as I go, I have nothing in my hands. The world was once in the palm of my hand, but now my palms are completely empty. Let people know that wealth and possessions are left behind in this world. The only things you can take with you are the good deeds and justice you have done." Dhul-Qarnayn passed away. The iron barrier he built may now be underground, or perhaps it still serves its purpose in a dimension beyond our sight. But what he truly built was not of stone and iron, but a monument of justice, knowledge, and faith erected in the consciousness of humanity. He taught us that technology is not meant to destroy humanity, but to help it thrive. He showed us that power is not given to oppress people, but to lend them a helping hand. And he reminded us that no matter how wealthy we become, our hands will be empty when we leave this world. Today, when we look back at our own lives, we see ourselves reflected in the mirror of Dhul-Qarnayn. Perhaps we cannot conquer the world. Perhaps we cannot mix iron and copper to build barriers. But each of us is the ruler of our own life. Now, at the end of this journey, looking at the empty palms of that ancient ruler, I ask you a question. Let this question echo in your mind. When you leave this world, will you leave behind broken hearts and ruins, or an invisible but indestructible wall of kindness sheltered in people's prayers? I also want to ask this. In the world we live in today, shouldn't someone like Dhul-Qarnayn appear and eradicate the cruelties that have become the most merciless? Or shouldn't each of us first strengthen ourselves for this cause and, as role models in society, work to foster an atmosphere of compassion in the world? Of course, the God who appointed Dhul-Qarnayn against the tyrants of his era will, when the time comes, appoint another Dhul-Qarnayn.